Good day, everyone. We are from Group 5, and today we would like to present about reframing. And here are our group members. There are Rose, Hilda, Alia, Fania, Dieva, and Bilgis. Hello, my name is Hilda Karisma, and my three last student numbers are 008. Here I would like to present about the first news with the source text 2097 pasien COVID-19 dirawat di Rumah Sakit Wisma Atlet Kemayoran. And the target text, Emergency Hospital Wisma Atlet treats 2097 COVID-19 patients. For the analysis, the first one we would like to analyze about the selective appropriation, and the source text here stated the detailed information, whereas the target text has omitted some information to build the concise text. The target text also avoids repetition, which can be seen in the omission of the word Kemayoran in the title of the source text didn't appear in the target text because the translator has omitted it and changed it to the addition of Central Jakarta in the first paragraph, which also referring to the same meaning as the exact place of the emergency hospital. Here, the translator tries to accentuate the place because previously in the title there is no such information about the exact location. Continue to the second analysis about framing by labeling. Here, the target text concerns to follow the local suitability for the readers by changing any Indonesian terms. For example, is the terms WIB, which translated into local time, because the translator tries not to put any local term of the source text in the target text because it might affect the understanding of the target text readers. And the other example is in the use of first name Aris, which changed to the use of last name Mudian in the target text. The reason is because the translator tends to follow the English rule to use the last name in stating a person's name. The third analysis is about temporal and spatial framing. Here, the source text focuses on the total number of patients because it always presents the number of patients before stating about the place, whereas in the target text, it emphasizes more in the place rather than the number of patients. Thus, the place is mentioned first before stating what happened in that place, which is the number of patients. The last analysis is about repositioning of participants. Here, the target text tends to build a concise sentence by using deixis, while the source text explains it in detail. The example of the deixis used is deixis of place here, which mentioned in the second paragraph of the target text that referring to the word Jakarta in the source text. And for the example that the target text tends to build a concise sentence can be seen in the caption of the picture in the news where the source text stated warga melintas di kawasan Rumah Sakit Darurat Wisma Atlet Kemayoran, Jakarta Pusat, yang digunakan pemerintah untuk menampung pasien COVID-19. Whereas the target text only mentioned about residents cross the area of Wisma Atlet Kemayoran in central Jakarta. And it didn't mention the further explanation about the current function of the emergency hospital, which is explained previously in the source text. Thank you.
My name is Diva Octaviani, my serial number is 109, and I'll be the second speaker. The second news is positif COVID-19 RI bertambah 5.633 pasien per 10 Maret, which translated into Indonesia at 5,633 COVID-19 cases in a single day. For the first analysis, the selective appropriation, the addition of the word Indonesia in the beginning of the translated news really puts Indonesia in the spotlight. There are changes in the first line which change from Kementerian Kesehatan melaporkan pada Rabu hingga pukul 12.00 WIB kenaikan harian kasus konfirmasi positif COVID-19 sebanyak 5.633 pasien sehingga total menjadi 1.398.578 kasus. 2. Indonesia report 5,633 additional COVID-19 cases, in the 24 hours ending Wednesday afternoon, bringing the country's total case tally to 1,398,578, the health ministry reported. Aside from the change of the structure, the addition of the word Indonesia as the subject in the translated news has implicitly cornered Indonesia in the eyes of foreign people, as if the translator wanted to make sure that the increasing case really happened in Indonesia, which indirectly emphasized how bad Indonesia really is in terms of handling the COVID-19 pandemic. Moving on to the framing by labeling, there isn't any change in the use of lexical items, terms, or phrases to identify a person, place, group, or other key elements in the narrative, as there isn't any naming or titling, which is the part of labeling within the news. As for temporal and spatial framing, there is also no exact change in how the translator presents the same set of events in a different way, but there are some changes in how the translator changes the structure of the time used in the text. The sixth line of the news is changed from terakhir, kasus aktif menurun sebanyak 98 menjadikan 144.231 kasus aktif per hari ini to as of 12 p.m. WIB Western Indonesia time on Wednesday, the number of active cases or patients under treatment for COVID-19 fell by 98 to reach 144,231. The change makes the opening of the sixth line at the translated news focus directly on the exact specific date rather than the decreasing cases in Indonesia. And lastly, in repositioning of participant, there's a big change at the end of the news. The source tag news really actually contains 8 lines, while the translated news only consists of 7 lines, which means there's a deletion of the whole one line in the translated version. The deletion of this one line actually changed the entire perspective of the participant, which is governments of Indonesia. The deletion at the end of the translated news changes the relationship between the government of Indonesia and its people. The deleted part says Satgas Penanganan COVID-19 terus mengingatkan masyarakat untuk menerapkan protokol kesehatan yang ketat yaitu 5N, yakni memakai masker, mencuci tangan dengan sabun di air mengalir, menjaga jarak, menjauhi kerumunan, serta mengurangi mobilitas. As this part has gone in the translated version, it makes the relationship of the government of Indonesia and the people seems rather distant, and it also can be misinterpreted that the government has done nothing to its people, as they are ignoring towards what happened. That is why the number of COVID-19 cases in Indonesia keep increasing. If that line is still attached to the translated news, the reader will know that the increasing number of COVID-19 in Indonesia are indeed inevitable despite what the government has done.
Hello, my name is Fania Destalia and my student number is 76. So, for the opportunity, I'm going to explain about the reforming strategies in the news trade. So, for the selective appropriation, both versions are quotation by Menkes or Health Minister Budi Gunadi. He directly said that the combination of vaccination and restriction mobility will effectively cut the spread of COVID-19. In this quote, it makes that the news have high qualities to the readers. It is because the statement from the government team were professional from the field, and the translation version was strictly translated from the original version. It can be seen by the news structure, which is in the beginning, middle, and the end. How the writer is translating it has the same structure as the Indonesian version. For the example is delayed on the Indonesian version, Menteri Kesehatan Menkes Budi Gunadi Sadikin mengemukakan bahwa kombinasi program vaksinasi dan pembatasan mobilitas warga akan efektif menekan penularan COVID-19. Becomes to the approach of implementing the vaccination programs and restriction public mobility will eventually curb the spread of COVID-19, according to Health Minister Budi Gunadi Sadikin as the translation version. So the next is the framing by labeling. There isn't any labeling in the translating version. It is because both version use the same lexical items, terms, or phrases for identifying a person, place, and other elements in the narrative news. And the next strategy is the temporal and spatial framing. In the English version, the person who said the statement is placed at the end sentence. For the example is the end sentence have Sadikin noted or according to Sadikin means that the writer emphasizes the information of the news which is the cutting spread of COVID-19. Meanwhile, in the Indonesian version, the person is placed at the beginning sentence. For the example, the news is starting by the word of Menkes Budi Gunadi mengemukakan. It means that the reader is more focused on the person who gives the statement. So it also emphasizes the readers, which is addressing them to obey Menkes statement. And in the last strategies is repositioning of participant. In the English version, there are two lines that are deleted from the news. The first part is acara Carta Politika Indonesia dengan tajuk Evaluasi Kebijakan, Aktivitas Masyarakat, dan Peta Politik Triwulan 1 2021 disiarkan langsung via daring pada Minggu. And the second part is Direktur Eksklusif Carta Politika Yunarto Wijaya, Menteri Kesehatan RI Budi Gunadi Sadikin, Gubernur Jawa Tengah Ganjar Pranowo, Gubernur Jawa Barat Ridwan Kamil, serta Wakil Gubernur DKI Jakarta menjadi pembicara dalam acara ini. Deletion of detailed information in the events and the participation of the translated text means that the English version is only focused on the information of what Indonesia did to cut COVID-19 infection, which is more targeted for the international readers who are not Indonesian. Although there is no change in the meaning, it is given the distance for the Indonesian people who see the news from the translated version. It is because not all the international readers are from foreign people. Indonesian people can also see the news from the English version. Meanwhile, the Indonesian version has detailed information for the event and participation, which makes the data more reliable. It means that the writer took alliance with the government team, which implicitly wants the readers to believe for getting vaccination and restriction mobility are the ways to cut COVID-19 infection. So that's all. Thank you.
Now, on the fourth news, we have the source tax, which is Satgas sebut 5.533.379 orang telah jalani vaksinasi COVID-19, while in the target tax, we have 5,533,379 Indonesians have been vaccinated against COVID-19. For selective appropriation, in ST, there are plenty of details which are absent in the T. For example, the omission of the second half of the narrative after the main information related to the headlines. Also, ASCII tends to accentuate the number and violation regarding the vaccination certificates that are shared by the people. It also uses a quotation of the talk by the officials. While TT also loses some of ASCII's adverbial clauses, mostly relating to the location relative to the news. For example, dalam keterangan yang diterima di Jakarta, Minggu disebutkan angka becomes the number of people receiving the first dose of vaccine jab on Sunday. So there is no adverb of place. Moreover, unlike ST, this later half of narrative talks about the progress of vaccination in Indonesia rather than the problem that arises because of it. For framing by labeling, in the same sentence, while ST doesn't mention the official who reported information, TT raised a topic by saying the task force said. Titi mentioned the party concerned in order to highlight who are involved in the situation. For example, orang becomes Indonesians rather than people. In temporal and spatial framing, Asti puts the adverbial clause first before delivering the main information, such as mentioning the adverb of time in the beginning of the sentence. For example, the number of people receiving the first dose of vaccine jab on Sunday. While Titi is inclined to put the adverb of time or place later at the end of the sentence, or
in a new sentence after all information is delivered, such as from the previous day, the task force said here on Sunday at the end of the sentence. Then, for the repositioning of participants, ASTI highlights the number included in the news by changing the number's color to orange, which is a vibrant and bright color. Moreover, in the introduction, ASTI puts a summary of the news in a quotation to emphasize the information. Besides, the covers of both news are also different, as they uses an individual who was just vaccinated inside a room as the cover, while TT uses a cover with people in an outside setting getting vaccinated.
And then for the fifth news, the source text is Polres Jakarta Selatan vaksinasi 1.356 personel, and in the target text it becomes South Jakarta policies 1356 officers to receive first vaccine doses. For the selective appropriation, there are a lot of paragraphs that are missing in the target text. It started in the fifth paragraph. Source text tends to give more information in the procedure of the vaccination and also the people who will get the vaccination. It also used some quotations said by the chief of the South Jakarta Police that some of it are also missing in the target text. Source text also do not really provide details of time in the news. However, it said the specific place where the vaccination happened. Meanwhile, in the target text, there are many additions that started in the fifth paragraph. After the main topic that has been discussed in the previous paragraph, target text tends to give information about doses of the vaccine, the amount of vaccines that Indonesians have received, and some details about the vaccine, for example, the certification and the company that produced the vaccine. Target text doesn't really provide some details of place in the news. However, it gives some details of time. It mentioned the day of the event but not the place. Therefore, target text wants to focus on the time when the events were conducted. For the framing by labeling, there is no big difference in the use of lexical items, terms, or phrases to identify a person, place, group, or other key elements in the narrative. However, there is still a difference. Source text use saat vaksinasi pertama, petugas kepolisian di halaman markas Polres Merto, Jakarta Selatan, Rabu, in the target text, it becomes who was scheduled for vaccination stated. So target text doesn't mention the person, the time, and the place of the quotation. For the temporal and spatial framing, source text wants to frame it as a report, the way of making the sentences. Source text is more focused on reporting the process of the incident rather than the time of the incident. For example, kami susun setidaknya minimal 150 sampai 200 orang untuk vaksinasi. It also use more active sentence rather than passive. Source text wants to show that it gets the source of the news from the policies that have been interviewed. Therefore, it gives the impression of report of the event. Meanwhile, target text use different techniques. It use passive sentences rather than active sentences. It is for the purpose to focus on the vaccination rather than the people who are involved in it. And it also highlights the time by adding in the front of the sentence that is doesn't mention in the source text. For example, every day we ready at least 150 until 200 people for vaccination. For the repositioning of participants, there's no difference between source text and target text. The obvious difference is only in the body after the fifth paragraph. Target text proposed a different topic that is doesn't mention in the source text.
And for the sixth news, with the source text, Kemensos berikan vaksin COVID-19 dosis kedua bagi 1.121 ASN, and the target text, 1,121 Social Affairs Ministry staff get COVID shot. For the selective appropriation, in source text, there are plenty of text that are omitted in the target text. It started on the first and second paragraph, and then fourth and fifth paragraph, in which some sentences are omitted and the rest are merged. Also, the ninth paragraph, which tells about a person feedback, is omitted in target text.
For the framing by labeling, there is no difference in terms of lexical items, but there are some changes in terms of phrases to identify a person, time, and place. In source text, the information of place and time di Gedung Aneka Bakti Salemba Jakarta Selasa was mentioned while it is deleted in target text, which leaves out the detailed information. And the third, temporal and spatial framing, source text addressing the person first before the statement. For example, salah seorang ASN dari Biro Humas yang menjalani vaksinasi kedua kalinya becomes after receiving her second vaccine shot in target text, which gives unclear information about who is the person that was mentioned. And the last one, repositioning of participants. There are two major differences in target text. The first one is that the target text includes a new summary in a quotation before the introduction, which does not appear in source text. The second difference is the deletion of a whole paragraph and some lines in another paragraph in target text. The deleted paragraph is Tias berharap digelarnya vaksinasi oleh pemerintah juga dapat diiringi dengan peningkatan layanan informasi dan alur perawatan pasien di rumah sakit.
For News 7, we have the source text, which is Wapres Pemerintah kembangkan riset vaksin COVID-19, while the target text is Government works with agencies for research to develop COVID-19 vaccine. For selective appropriation, NST, every detail is spread out, such as Kementerian Kesehatan, Badan Riset dan Inovasi Nasional, disingkat BRIN, dan beberapa BUMN terkait. While in city, some details are rather left out, such as relevant agencies without mentioning what these agencies are in the same position of the sentence as ST. However, these details are mentioned later in a different part of the news. At some point, ST repeatedly mentions some details to accentuate the information, while TT omits the utterance of the party concerned that is available in ST, which is tentu koordinasinya di bawah BRIN. Presumably, the purpose is to avoid repetition. For framing by labeling, ST identifies and gives credits to the speaker who reports first. Then ST managed to deliver the information so the readers will know who is reporting, so it sounds more credible. For example, Wakil Presiden Ma'ruf Amin mengatakan, while in TT generalized some people or parties involved because it prioritized the information, then states who is the speaker. For example, vaccine Vice President Ma'ruf Amin stated at the end of the sentence. In temporal and spatial framing, TT adds some details because of the difference to optimize the language structure and enhancement of the communicative function, such as inside the bracket, what is taking place now, and outside the bracket is a threat. Then the last is for repositioning of participants. The most obvious difference is TT has a summary of the news in a quotation before the introduction, while ST doesn't.
So for the news number 8, with the source text, BPOM berikan izin penggunaan darurat obat corona Avivavir. And the target text with the title BPOM approves COVID-19 drug Avivavir for emergency use. For the selective appropriation, there are not many changes shown in the source text and target text in terms of addition and omission. The target text were translated the exact same way as the source text, although there are dialogue text added in the target text which used to emphasize the person who gives the information. For example, in source text, the line sementara virus baru bisa dilumpuhkan dalam waktu 9 hari were translated into meanwhile, the new variant of the virus can be paralyzed within 9 days. The drugs developer have claimed BPOM added. The part the drugs developer have claimed BPOM added was added in the target text. For the second framing by labeling, there is no difference in terms of lexical items, but there are some changes in terms of phrases to identify a person and place. The first paragraph of source text infectious virus corona is changed into coronavirus patient. The second paragraph also contains a change in terms of place, which is the word Jakarta in source text becomes here in target text. Source text was more informative than the target text. The third, temporal and spatial framing. Source text and target text always present the speaker at the beginning before writing the statement, such as dalam keterangannya, Bebong menyampaikan, which translated into in addition the Bebong stated. The difference is the target text always adds dialogue text after the statement. And the last one, repositioning of participants. There are only a few differences in the text between the two versions. As a result, the translator appears to have only translated source text into target text in the same way, without modifying the form presented in the source text.
For the ninth news, the source text is Gubernur 106 perawat di Jatim meninggal akibat COVID-19. In the target text, it becomes East Java has lost 106 nurses to COVID-19 governor. For the selective appropriation, source text gives more narration before adding the quotation. For example, in the second paragraph, Khofifah mengatakan bahwa pemerintah Provinsi Jawa Timur menyampaikan source text also mentions several times the number of the nurses who have lost to COVID-19. Meanwhile, in the target text, it immediately adds the quotation without giving any narration. Target text also deletes some paragraphs, that is the second and the third paragraph, and it also combines the seventh and eighth paragraph as one paragraph by deleting some parts, so it makes some details are missing. For example, the amount of places that are in the yellow zone. However, target text also gives some paragraph that propose another topic that is doesn't mention in the source text. Target text also gives some details such as the number of people who have succumbed to the coronavirus. For the framing by labeling, source text mention the name of the governor completely along with the position. For example, Gubernur Jawa Timur Khofifah Indar Parawansa. In some parts, source text tends to use the name of the governor, Khofifah, rather than state the position as governor. Meanwhile, in the target text, use the pronoun she rather than say the name of the governor or mention her position as the East Java governor. Target text also changed the translation of kata Khofifah usai memberikan pengarahan pada HUT Persatuan Perawat Nasional Indonesia di Kota Malang, Jawa Timur, Selasa, into she said here on Tuesday. Then, target text mentioned the event in the next paragraph. The purpose is to focus on the quotation rather than the time when she said the information to the journalist. For the temporal and spatial framing, source text mention the person first before the information. For example, Khofifah menambahkan 106 perawat yang meninggal dunia tersebut. Because in source text, the person who gives the information is more important. Meanwhile, in the target text, it mentioned the information first, then the person that is Khofifah in the end of the sentence. Target text wants the reader to focus on the information rather than the person who gave it. For example, after the information, it states she told journalists after attending an event. And then for the repositioning of participants, there's a big difference in the body of the news in target text. It adds another topic after the translation of the next paragraph. Apart from that, there's no difference.
Okay, for the last news, the source text entitled Kemenkes gandeng Halodoc siapkan vaksinasi drive-thru untuk lansia. And the target text is Health Ministry, Halodoc jointly organized drive-thru vaccination. For the analysis, the first one is about selective appropriation. Here, the target text has omitted the word untuk lansia from the title of the source text. And the reason is to accentuate only about the new development in vaccination programs without give a specific information about the intended people that will get this drive to vaccination, which is the elderly. And go on to the second analysis is about repositioning of participants from both two versions of the news. there are no differences because the translator maintains to position him or herself as only a translator and tries to make the target text as original as source text.
For the next analysis, framing by labeling, actually there isn't any labeling or titling or using the reframing strategies within the news since the news itself totally translated the way it is without even changing the structure. But yet there is one job title mentioned in the news, which is PLT Dirjen Pencegahan dan Pengendalian Penyakit Kementerian Kesehatan, Maxirein Rondonuwu, that directly translated into Acting Director General of Disease Prevention and Control, Ministry of Health, Maxirein Rondonuwu. There's actually no major change in the translated version of the news. As in temporal and spatial framing, there is an additional information which quite closely related with the drive-through vaccination, which is the fact that Halodoc has done the same drive-through method for another health facility program related to COVID-19 that lies in the end of the news that said Halodoc had earlier also initiated a tracing and testing process for COVID-19 by employing the drive-through method, currently but being developing at 20 locations spread across 11 cities in Indonesia. This line indeed gives the new information about Halodoc aside from the drive-through vaccination news.
Come up to the conclusion. So the overall comparison of COVID-19 news on antranews.com in the March edition mainly has those four aspects of reframing. The first one is in omission strategies applied by the translator in target text, while in the source text it's stated the detailed information. Then in labeling, it depends on the target readers because the target text focus on using the term standard for the international readers, whereas the source text used Indonesian terms such as abbreviation. For the temporal and spatial framing, the strategy used by the translator is changing the sentence structure from passive to active or vice versa. And the last aspect, in the repositioning of participants, the difference between those two versions of the news isn't that specific, mainly about some additional explanation or the deletion in target text. That's all from group 5. If there are any question, you can just come up to our forum. Thank you and have a nice day.